Welcome back, explorers. Tonight, we're diving deep into the Amazon's most incredible secret: massive, sophisticated cities that thrived for centuries, then mysteriously vanished without a trace. These weren't small settlements. We're talking about urban centers that housed hundreds of thousands of people, complete with advanced engineering that would amaze modern architects. What caused entire civilizations to disappear into the jungle? Hit that like button and subscribe as we uncover the hidden truth about the Amazon's lost metropolises. Let's begin this extraordinary journey. Chapter 1: Echoes in the Emerald Cathedral. In the hour before dawn, when the Amazon rainforest holds its breath between night and day, something extraordinary emerges from the morning mist. As the first pale light filters through the emerald canopy, geometric patterns slowly materialize in the forest floor below: perfect circles, precise squares, and arrow straight lines that stretch for miles through what appears to be untamed wilderness. These are not natural formations. They are the ghostly signatures of sophisticated urban centers that once thrived in the heart of the world's largest rainforest, home to civilizations so advanced that modern science is only beginning to understand their achievements. Listen. In the growing light, the forest awakens with its eternal symphony. The haunting calls of howler monkeys echo across the canopy like voices from another time. Somewhere in the distance, the rhythmic splash of wooden paddles cuts through flowing water, while the steady thrum of insects creates nature's own percussion. But beneath these familiar sounds lies something else: an almost tangible sense of human presence, as if the very trees remember the millions who once called this green cathedral home. Here on Marajo Island, where the mighty Amazon meets the Atlantic, elevated mounds rise like sleeping giants from the floodplains. These earthworks, some stretching over 40 feet high and covering hundreds of acres, were once the foundations of remarkable cities. Between 800 and 1200 CE, during the height of Amazonian urban civilization, the Marajora people transformed this landscape into one of the most sophisticated settlement systems in the pre-Columbian Americas. As dawn breaks fully, revealing the intricate patterns of raised fields that still mark the landscape, we begin to glimpse the genius of these ancient urban planners. They didn't fight the rainforest, they partnered with it. Where European cities conquered nature with stone and mortar, these settlements worked in harmony with seasonal flood cycles, creating elevated mounds connected by canals that transformed the annual deluge from destroyer to life-giver. The evidence lies literally beneath our feet. The terra preta, or Amazonian dark earth, still enriches the soil centuries after its creation. This artificially enhanced earth, black and fertile as chocolate cake, reveals the revolutionary agricultural techniques that sustained urban populations in the tens of thousands. Through careful composting of human waste, food scraps, and specially selected organic matter, these ancient agriculturalists created soils so rich they continue to support abundant crops today. In the growing morning light, you can almost see them: the canoe traffic that once navigated these waterways like busy highways, carrying elaborate polychrome pottery decorated with intricate designs, bundles of palm fiber textiles, and the products of vast forest gardens. These weren't random hunter-gatherer camps, but planned communities with sophisticated water management systems, ceremonial centers, and residential districts arranged around central plazas. The anthropogenic forests surrounding these settlements tell their own story. What appears to be pristine wilderness is actually a carefully orchestrated ecosystem, where useful species were encouraged and cultivated over generations. Brazil nut groves, acai palms, cacao trees, and dozens of medicinal plants grew in managed abundance, creating what we might call the world's first urban forests, food production systems disguised as natural rainforest. Indigenous oral traditions, passed down through generations like precious heirlooms, speak of great cities that once rose from these mounds. Elders tell of elaborate feasts where hundreds gathered to share manioc beer and roasted tapir, of skilled artisans creating pottery so fine it rivals anything produced in the ancient world, of trade networks that connected these river cities to settlements thousands of miles away. Recent discoveries have shattered long-held assumptions about the Amazon's capacity to support complex civilizations. LiDAR surveys, piercing through the forest canopy with laser precision, continue to reveal geometric earthworks covering areas larger than many modern cities. What archaeologists once dismissed as natural formations are now recognized as the carefully planned infrastructure of urban societies that may have supported populations in the millions. As the morning mist finally lifts, revealing the full scope of these ancient earthworks, we're confronted with one of archaeology's most humbling realizations. For centuries, we believed the Amazon was too hostile, too primitive to support true civilization. We were wrong. The sophisticated urban centers that once flourished here represent some of humanity's most remarkable achievements: sustainable cities that work with nature rather than against it, technologies that enriched rather than depleted the environment, and urban planning concepts that modern cities are only beginning to rediscover. The lost cities of the Amazon aren't just archaeological curiosities. They're blueprints for survival, written in earth and stone by people who understood something we're desperately trying to relearn: how to build human civilization that enhances rather than destroys the natural world. The Terra Preta speaks across centuries, its impossibly rich black earth telling stories of agricultural genius that modern science struggles to comprehend. Here, scattered across the Amazon basin like dark jewels, lie patches of soil so fertile they continue producing abundant harvests 800 years after their creators vanished. These aren't natural formations, they're humanity's first biotechnology, living laboratories where ancient engineers transformed poor rainforest soils into agricultural gold. Between 800 and 1200 CE, the sophisticated urban centers of Amazonia reached their magnificent peak. The Marajora peoples of the Amazon Delta had perfected the art of building cities that breathed with the rhythm of seasonal floods. Their elevated mounds rose like islands above the floodplains, connected by an intricate network of raised causeways that remained functional year-round. From these strategic positions, they commanded trade routes that stretched from the Atlantic to the Andes. Archaeological evidence reveals urban planning that rivals anything achieved in medieval Europe. The largest Marajora settlements supported populations exceeding 100,000 people, larger than London or Paris at the time. These weren't temporary camps but permanent cities with sophisticated infrastructure. Elaborate water management systems channeled seasonal floods into carefully engineered raised fields where crops flourished during both wet and dry seasons. The secret lay in their revolutionary understanding of soil science. The terra preta that surrounds these ancient settlements contains 3 times the carbon content of surrounding soils, shot through with pottery fragments, charcoal, and organic matter that creates a self-sustaining ecosystem. Modern analysis reveals these soils teem with beneficial microorganisms that continue regenerating fertility centuries after their creation. The Marajora and their contemporaries had discovered how to make soil that improved with time. Their agroforestry systems transformed the rainforest itself into productive anthropogenic landscapes. What appears to casual observers as pristine wilderness often reveals itself under scientific scrutiny as carefully managed forest gardens. Useful species were concentrated in cultivated Brazil nut groves, acai palm stands, and cacao trees arranged in productive combinations that mimicked natural forest structure while dramatically increasing yields of food, medicine, and materials. Manioc processing became a high art, with elaborate techniques for removing toxins and creating nutritious flour that could be stored for months. Archaeological sites reveal sophisticated ceramic griddles for processing cassava, some large enough to feed hundreds of people. The rhythmic pounding of manioc preparation would have provided the daily soundtrack for these bustling urban centers.
The monumental earthworks surrounding these cities demonstrate engineering capabilities that boggle the mind.
Geometric enclosures covering hundreds of acres required moving millions of cubic meters of earth using only wooden tools and human labor. The precision of these constructions, visible in their full geometric glory only from aircraft, suggests sophisticated mathematical knowledge and planning capabilities. Waterway management reached extraordinary levels of complexity. The peoples of the Upper Xingu created canal systems that connected distant river basins, allowing dugout canoes to navigate directly between watersheds. These weren't simple ditches but carefully engineered waterways with locks, weirs, and fish traps that managed water flow while providing protein for growing urban populations. The elaborate polychrome pottery emerging from these settlements represents some of the finest ceramic art ever created in the Americas. Massive burial urns standing over 3 feet tall required technical mastery and artistic vision that speaks to specialized craft production and social stratification. The intricate iconography depicts complex mythologies and social hierarchies that governed these sophisticated societies. Trade networks facilitated by these water highways stretched across the entire continent. Goods moved freely between the Amazon Delta and settlements over 2,000 miles upriver. Precious stones from the Brazilian highlands, medicinal plants from specific ecological niches, and specialized pottery styles spread across distances that would challenge modern logistics. The population densities achieved in these urban centers required careful resource management and social coordination. Seasonal flood cycles that might have destroyed other civilizations became opportunities for these societies, who developed flexible urban designs that adapted to environmental rhythms rather than fighting them. Their elevated mounds provided dry season refuges while their raised fields captured nutrient-rich flood sediments. By 1200 CE, these terra preta kingdoms represented the culmination of over a millennium of technological innovation and urban development. Their sustainable intensification of agriculture supported population densities that wouldn't be seen again in Amazonia until the 20th century. They had solved the fundamental challenge of tropical urbanism: how to build cities that enhanced rather than degraded their life-supporting ecosystems. The terra preta beneath our feet represents more than ancient agriculture. It's proof that human civilization can improve the environment that sustains it, creating abundance that grows rather than diminishes with time. Chapter 3: When the forest reclaimed the cities. The silence began gradually, like evening mist settling over water. Where once the rhythmic pounding of manioc processing had echoed from elevated mounds, only the gentle splash of caimans sliding into dark channels remained. The great cities that had flourished for 8 centuries were entering their twilight, not through catastrophic collapse, but through the slow, inexorable embrace of change. By the 13th century, the climate itself was shifting. The reliable flood cycles that had nourished raised fields for generations began to falter. Seasons arrived late or not at all. The carefully calibrated balance between human management and natural rhythms, a harmony perfected over centuries, began to wobble like a canoe caught in unexpected currents. In the great plaza complexes where thousands had once gathered for seasonal ceremonies, grass pushed through the joints of fitted earthworks. The anthropogenic forests, so carefully tended to produce Brazil nuts and acai, gradually returned to wild abundance. Without constant human intervention, the managed groves remembered older patterns, older allegiances to the deeper forest's calling. The changes came in whispers rather than shouts. Families began leaving certain settlements during flood season and simply never returned. Trade routes that had carried precious stones and elaborate polychrome pottery across thousands of miles slowly emptied as communities turned inward, focusing on local sustainability rather than distant connections. The great network of communication and exchange that had bound the Amazon together for a millennium began to fray at its edges.
Vines crept higher up the walls of communal buildings each year. The terra preta soils, enriched by centuries of careful waste management and charcoal incorporation, proved so fertile that they quickly supported dense secondary growth. Ironically, the very success of Amazonian soil building techniques accelerated the forest's return. Where other civilizations left barren ruins, these cities became gardens of wild abundance. The massive earthworks that had required coordinated labor from hundreds of workers remained, but their purposes shifted. Instead of defining plaza spaces for human ceremony, they became natural amphitheaters where howler monkeys called across the dawn. The raised fields that had fed thousands transformed into seasonal wetlands where birds nested and fish spawned in numbers that would have amazed even the original builders. Some communities adapted by becoming smaller, more mobile. The descendants of the great terra preta builders maintained their profound ecological knowledge while embracing more fluid relationships with place. They carried forward the secrets of forest management and soil enrichment, but applied them to temporary camps and seasonal settlements rather than permanent cities. Tree roots worked patiently through abandoned structures, following the natural architecture of decay. What had taken generations to build was unmade in a century, not through destruction but through absorption. The forest didn't conquer these cities, it embraced them, incorporating their enhanced soils and carefully selected tree species into an even richer tapestry of life. The dugout canoes that had once carried traders laden with goods now moved quietly through waterways where fishermen sought sustenance rather than surplus. The elaborate featherwork that had marked social distinctions became practical clothing adapted to forest life. The complex pottery traditions simplified into functional vessels suited to more modest households. Yet this was not cultural death but transformation. The accumulated wisdom of 8 centuries of urban innovation didn't vanish, it dispersed into the forest itself. Every enriched grove, every carefully selected stand of fruit trees, every stretch of enhanced soil carried forward the legacy of the terra preta builders. They had created not just cities but entire landscapes of abundance. By 1400, much of the Amazon had returned to apparent wilderness. Travelers moving through waterways where great cities had once flourished would have seen only endless forest canopy. Yet this wilderness was deceptive, it was an anthropogenic landscape, shaped by human intelligence and enhanced by human care. The forest that reclaimed the cities was itself a creation of those cities. The sounds changed too. Where once the calls of traders and the voices of ceremony had mixed with forest sounds, now only the ancient orchestra remained, the throaty bellowing of howler monkeys, the rustle of countless leaves, the splash of fish jumping in channels where dugout canoes had once carried the wealth of nations. In the gathering dusk, as shadows lengthened across the abandoned mounds, the forest sang its own lullaby of reclamation. The terra preta kingdoms had not failed, they had completed their greatest work, transforming into a wilderness richer than any natural forest, carrying forward their gifts in the very soil beneath the trees. Now, centuries later, the forest keeps its secrets in the silence between heartbeats. Beneath layers of fallen leaves and generations of new growth, the enhanced soils continue their patient work. The terra preta created by those long-ago hands still nurtures root systems with supernatural richness, feeding trees that tower toward distant stars. Each handful of this dark earth contains the concentrated wisdom of 800 years, the accumulated knowledge of how to work with rather than against the forest's natural rhythms. In the deepest hours before dawn, when even the most restless creatures settle into stillness, you can almost hear the whispered conversations between ancient soils and modern roots. The earthworks sleep beneath protective blankets of vegetation, their geometric patterns invisible to ground-level eyes but perfectly preserved in the patient earth. Archaeological traces rest undisturbed, waiting with infinite patience for future generations to piece together their stories. The anthropogenic groves continue their slow dance of abundance.
Brazil nut trees planted by careful hands still drop their treasure-filled pods each wet season. Acai palms sway in the same gentle rhythms, their descendants still clustering in the suspicious abundance that marks human-modified landscapes. These forest gardens remember their creators through the simple act of continued production, generation after generation of carefully selected species thriving in arrangements too perfect for chance. Water moves through ancient channels with the same unhurried persistence it has maintained for millennia. Where elaborate raised fields once caught and channeled seasonal floods, subtle variations in topography still guide the water's flow. The forest has learned to breathe with these rhythms, expanding and contracting with wet and dry seasons in patterns first established by urban engineers whose names have been forgotten by everyone except the earth itself. Deep beneath the canopy, darkness reigns with velvet completeness. Here, in these cathedral spaces between massive trunks, time moves differently. A century passes like a single breath. The urgent concerns that drove city builders fade into the deeper rhythms of growth and decay, the eternal cycle of forest renewal. Fallen logs become nurseries for new life. Ancient pottery shards slowly transform into mineral components of soil. Everything returns, eventually, to the fundamental elements from which all life springs. The night sounds create a symphony of continuity. Insects maintain their constant percussion, a rhythm unchanged since the first human settlements took shape along these waterways. Somewhere in the darkness, a jaguar moves with the same silent precision its ancestors brought to these same paths when the mounds bustled with human activity. The forest's memory is held not in monuments or written records but in these persistent patterns of life. Archaeological mysteries rest in perfect preservation beneath protective layers of humidity and vegetation. Elaborate burials remain sealed in ceramic urns, their contents waiting patiently for careful scientific excavation. Massive earthworks maintain their precise angles despite centuries of root growth and seasonal flooding. The forest has become the ultimate custodian, protecting these sleeping giants beneath its emerald embrace. As dawn approaches with infinite slowness, the forest prepares for another day of quiet growth. Solar energy will soon begin filtering down through countless layers of leaves, powering the same photosynthetic processes that once fed urban populations. The enhanced soils will continue their slow work of nurturing exceptional abundance. Trees will add another microscopic layer to their annual rings, recording another year in the forest's patient chronicle. The lost cities have become something more than archaeological sites, they have become part of the forest's own body, integrated so completely into the ecosystem that distinguishing between natural and artificial becomes meaningless. The terra preta builders achieved a kind of immortality denied to creators of stone monuments. Their cities live on in every enhanced grove, every suspiciously fertile clearing, every geometric pattern still visible to satellite sensors. In the profound stillness of deep forest night, the accumulated wisdom of centuries settles like moisture on leaves. The sophisticated understanding of sustainable abundance, the delicate balance between human needs and ecological health, the patient knowledge of how to enhance rather than degrade natural systems, all of this rests quietly beneath the canopy, waiting. The sleeping giants beneath these trees are not just archaeological remains but living legacies. They continue their work through enhanced soils and managed forests, through the persistent abundance of anthropogenic groves and the careful spacing of useful species. The forest itself has become their monument, more enduring than any stone architecture, more beautiful than any human design. In this eternal cycle of growth and rest, the ancient wisdom whispers its secrets to those patient enough to listen to the forest's deep dreams.